welcome to Highs and Lows. We're back after a bit of a hiatus. There's been a few weeks that we've been off over the New Year's break, but we're glad to be back. Lots to talk about now, obviously. I'm Robert Sawatsky here in the Hong Kong newsroom together with Matthew Miller, online editor, and Soon Chen Kung, who is our China reporter as well. And so we're going to talk about Facebook and all the changes that have been happening there. We also came out with the results of a huge survey that we did on overwork in the industry, particularly here in Asia. We got great response to it, and that's on our premium page. And we're also going to look at basically every week we want to look at one big spot at the end, one big piece of work.
Yep.
And today it's going to be the Alibaba's big Olympic ad that they came up with, so very timely. So we're going to get to all that stuff, but first I wanted to just give you a look at kind of what's happening on our premium page, because if you haven't been there lately, we've had a number of updates. That's also where you'll find the entire Overworked survey, which will be there. But we've had some great articles recently, so a few things just I want to highlight is we had a couple freelancers write some articles for us. One was on the big migration that's coming around Lunar New Year in China, and so Helen Roxburgh wrote this piece, and it looks at the fact that during travel one might think that people are extremely busy and have little time to pay attention to ads, but there's actually a huge captive audience because of the travel time. Mobile time there's a lot of mobile time, and it provides a real opportunity for marketers. So that was one story. The other story that we was marketing in Indonesia, and actually Matt, you had a great headline for that, which was cautious with a chance of boycotts. This revolved around the controversy in Indonesia around Wall's Gaytime ice cream, which is not even sold there, but became aware there and became a bit of an issue for Wall. So we posed that question of what do international brands do in Indonesia when they perhaps are openly favorable towards LGBT rights and so on, but deal with Indonesia as well, in a country where it's where there's illegal and the laws are different. So a bit of a quandary in terms of kind of the pragmatism and not trying to appear two-faced. Brands sort of have to walk that line. We posed some interesting questions there.
Yeah. And two more we wanted to mention. Earlier this week, our colleague Olivia Parker put up a story on kidfluencers, so young YouTube creators who are drawing a following and drawing the attention of brands. And she actually tracked down some of the more popular ones in Asia, talked to at least one or two of them, and the article has some details on them and how they view their process and how they work with brands, and then just some basic advice for brands in there. So I thought that was good. And then today, just a few minutes ago, or maybe 20 minutes ago now, we posted our newest episode of Private View. So Private View, if you're familiar with the old magazine, it was a long-standing section in there, but we've brought it to the modern age in a video format where we get two creatives on camera, and we let them watch 2 or 3 ads and react to it on camera and give their thoughts to it. And for some reason, in this episode, I don't think we really planned it this way, but we had 3 ads that relied heavily on singing and or dancing. So it's kind of a fun episode.
Chasing too.
And chasing, and and a lot of flipping as well. So those are fun. So check it out.
Yeah. So let's talk Facebook.
Okay.
In part, I guess, because they just came out with earnings, which are pretty impressive by the numbers. $13 billion in revenue, $4.3 billion in profit. Healthy company. I still remember back in the day when everyone was wondering, what are they going to be able to monetize mobile and so on. Well, 89% of the revenue comes from mobile ads. A few of the stats that jumped out for me as far as ads and marketing go, is in the importance to Facebook. The number of ads jumped by 15% last year in 2017. That was kind of a slower pace of growth from the 50% jump that we saw the year before. The price per ad rose 29%, so it rose an incredibly large amount, and that sort of, I think, is quelling some of the fears, I guess, in the financial community, again, about kind of Facebook's ability to do this as it moves forward with its newsfeed changes.
Yeah, but from the brand point of view, that may not be a surprise.
Right.
That I think people pretty much expect the price to go up, and hey, if you can command that kind of pricing power, why not, right? Yeah, the newsfeed change I think is the one that sort of, at least initially, caused a lot more consternation among advertisers who had grown used to the idea of a relatively free earned media having a big impact. But the message that I think has come through in the way that they're promising to de-emphasize brand content and re-emphasize family and friend content is that the days of organic reach are kind of gone, and you might as well just forget about that and move on to some other tactics with Facebook. And obviously, spending money would be number one, but then there are also some other things that brands can do.
Yeah.
Well, I think Facebook fatigue is a problem that they have come to realize that it could potentially lead to a bigger problem, because if people are spending less time and they find the platform not so engaging or too much withdrawal going on, eventually in the long term they might eventually abandon the platform. So probably it could be a smart move for Facebook to focus back on what makes it a enjoyable platform in the first place, in the first few years when it was first launched.
And also just walk away from all the controversy over fake news if they can reduce that somehow. That's part of it as well. It all feeds into this change.
And if you could spend less time watching the longer form videos, watching dog videos or cat videos, probably you could see more posts from your friends and family. That might be shorter, and you might eventually see more posts and possibly more advertisement. That's what Sheryl Sandberg said in the news report. So she was pretty optimistic. And also, of course, what do you think about the potential Instagram? Not really replacing, but could be a potential nicer platform for brands to work on, because they have Insta stories that are really the copy from Snapchat that's really engaging and really enjoyable, that I personally like.
Yeah, no, that's true. We could see a bit more of a shift towards Instagram. One of the things in the earnings that, again, was, drawing a bit of worry from, those advisors and kind of those that were covering the stock, was that the number of people that were logged in North America, which was its biggest, most profitable market, actually went down for the first time. So that some are saying it's like, okay, well, these news feed changes are coming, then let's give that a shot, and let's see if, yes, there'll be a bit of a short-term hit maybe with kind of a reduction of the amount of a brand revenue and advertisement that's come in, like you said, perhaps offset by rising prices, but for the long term, maybe this will make for a healthier feed.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the way that after the initial shock wore off, the advice that we started to see for brands was much more of the take it easy, this isn't the end of the world, let's not all panic. But there are some specific tactics that I think I'm going to borrow literally from a column that we published by James Gobert, who's head of digital and social at Ogilvy in Malaysia. And so just a couple of the points that he mentioned were: stop any engagement baiting in your posts. If you're asking people to vote or to frown, use the frown emoji. It's just not, that stuff's not going to work. Stop posting any content that actually even links back to your own sites, because that also it's not going to be effective. You're not going to drive traffic to your sites if you're a brand through that kind of thing. Think more like a publisher in terms of publishing actually useful, interesting content, and do more live videos like we're doing right now, because those Facebook sees higher engagement from those than it does from any kind of pre-recorded video. And then focus on Facebook's as a social CRM channel, which I think is something a lot of brands have talked about but haven't really done as much as they could, to make that happen.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It'll probably, involve just a change of tack. I think initially there was a bit of anger. There was a bit of, we put so much money in, like you said before, to try to get some kind of organic reach happening, and it's just, instead we just have to keep boosting and boosting. It's just not paying off. So now it's all about kind of changing tactics in the future. So it'll be interesting for us to watch for sure.
Yep.
I want to shift gears and go to the Overworked survey that I mentioned. So we did the survey. We had responses from more than 500 people, professionals, Marcom's professionals in Asia Pacific.
Thank you.
From everywhere, from India to Australia to China. So it was great. I mean, we had a lot of response. I think in Singapore was the top market. Also good response in Hong Kong as well. But some interesting stats came out of it. One was, the headline, we want to just get an overall sense as to whether or not people felt that they were overworked. 53% said they felt they were overworked, which to some people might not think that that's a huge number, but 50% also felt that their health was affected by overwork, and that's a little bit more startling a number,
Yeah,
and
that
a
was
little
much-
bit more concerning.
Much more worrisome, I would say, yeah.
And
I was
over
surprised at that one.
60 said their social life suffered because of the time, the long hours that they spend at work. So social life is directly related to your health. So
Mm.
That's
there's
that's true. I guess
Yeah.
your social life is related to your health, but yeah, I would expect that more of your social life would be cut off by work. For me, kids I think are a bigger impact on my social life than on work. But yeah, I mean, so obviously though the issue is there. When you still look at it, it means that over 50% though still feel that there's overwork, so it's like more work than they can cope with. So we kind of wanted to look into then, well, how many hours do you actually work during the week? So when we looked at that, at first again, it doesn't seem that crazy in terms of, but the biggest section was 41 to 51 hours a week, and 37% of people said that they worked that, which is you're working 8 to 10 hours a week. That's not unreasonable if you're working, putting in overtime. People do spend a bit of extra time at work. But if you add up everything below that, so you start going to 51 hours plus, which means you're working more than 10 hours a week. There's still almost 60% of people that
60%, yeah.
work more than 10 hours a day, on an average work week. And then if you could break that down even further, there's nearly a quarter of the Marcoms professionals will work more than 61 hours a week. And
Yeah.
that's like getting into 12 hours plus a day. That's a lot.
That's significant. I think that was what struck me, was that that's the level where it really starts to interfere with any kind of life, outside. You only have a couple of hours a day where you're not at work, and well, depending on how late you're able to stay up. Maybe I'm speaking for myself, but
it doesn't include commute time. So
Yeah, right.
So
Right.
it could be like probably 1 or 2 hours on average. So.
But that's really interesting too, that point, because I did this story before comparing life when the people started their careers in advertising and now. And what was clear is that kind of in the 80s and 90s and so on, hours were also really long and perhaps longer. And in a way, technology had a lot to do with that, because it's like you couldn't deal with your stuff on the go. You couldn't do that, so you had to stay in the office to finish that paperwork to get it done, or if you want to forward something, it all had to be printed out and done there. So people spent more time. Now they have more freedom, but they're connected all the time.
and I'm
right?
sure all those minutes that every day you spend a few minutes doing that, and it adds up. And I'm sure that that's not really included when we ask people about how many hours they work. They tend to think of the office time.
Yeah, we did have some interesting findings there too on, are you, how connected are you on weekends? What kind of apps are you on the weekend? And WhatsApp is the big work, messaging medium of choice, it seems. But we also then kind of, moved on from that and said, why are people staying late? Then what's keeping people in the office? And this is I thought was really telling, because we've heard before about people saying, well, it's like, it's a cultural thing, and people feel that they have to stay late because, their boss will stay late and that kind of thing. But when we actually did the survey, it was very clear. It was no, it's all about the work. So 71% said they stayed because there's too much work. 61% said it was pending deadlines, that was the reason. Another, almost half, said they just didn't want to take work home. All the other stuff, like not wanting to leave before your boss, just enjoy working at late, that all just factored really slowly.
I thought this was great, because I'm an evidence-based person, and this was like,
Yeah.
that trope comes up all the time. Well, oh, it's just because it's Asian, it's different, and now we put a little bit of, just a little bit of research behind it, and that is totally not the reason that at least people say they're working late.
Yeah.
Nobody is saying that they're working late because their boss does, almost nobody. And so
There's just too much to do.
yeah, there's just too much to do. So it almost makes me wonder, is that just actually kind of like an excuse that the bosses would like to believe is true and would like to
Right.
rely on when they're answering questions about how long their people work?
Yeah, no, exactly. So yeah, that was very clear. The other alarming stat that came out of it was, are you compensated for the extra work that you put in? And it was
90% said they were not compensated.
89% said no, not compensated for the extra work. We broke down if you are compensated, how are you compensated? Mostly it was with extra time that might be here or there, etc. But 89% said the work that they did was not
huge.
compensated for at all. And then when that follows up, like, do you feel that you're kind of being valued at work? I think that reflects with some of those findings that we had in the survey as well. And there's sort of like a 50-50 split who felt that kind of their extra efforts were recognized.
Yeah, so like being appreciated is nice, but being compensated is better. And just it's sort of a culture where people to some degree accept that they're being compensated by not losing their job and by getting the chance to advance up the career ladder for doing all this extra work. But it's really that's really troubling and unfair. I mean, on a basic level.
So by compensation, I wonder what they want. But in compensation, is it monetary or more off days? Because we have spoken before about Garland that gives its workers unlimited off days. So would they want more money or more off days instead?
Well, yeah, and where we looked at kind of office perks in this as well, it's very clear that that workers want flexibility. That's the number one thing that they want, is like the ability to, like they said, shift hours, work from home, either flexibility in hours or in kind of location of work. Just that's the number one thing that workers want nowadays. Anyways, a ton of other great findings there. Again, if you are a premium subscriber, you can go in and see the whole works, every single result. So there was lots there. All right, let's look at a piece of work.
All right.
And let's we want to take a look at Alibaba's new great big or very small focused Olympic ad. And they came out with that this week, and you actually listened in on a press conference about it.
I listened on Monday night when Chris Tong, the chief marketing officer, calling from Hangzhou, telling the U.S. reporters, mainly it was catered for the U.S. reporters, telling them that it's Alibaba's first global campaign as a brand, because previously they were never addressed to a global audience. It's very much a Chinese company, and its objective is to tell the world that we are Alibaba, and because they are so saturated in China anyway. And they partnered with IOC last year for the e-commerce and cloud computing. It's a very long partnership, 12 years until 2028. So it's the first venture for Olympics, and there'll be many more to come for Paris, for Paris in 2028.
Cool. Well, should we look at it?
Yeah, let's play it.
99% of people think they are nobody. 97% of companies are small companies. 92% of countries are small countries. 95% of athletes are unknown. Small can be calculated, but it cannot be ignored. So, we have a different point of view on small. We believe a small character has unrivaled power. A small action can touch millions of people. A small step forward can set a new record. A small change can create a difference. A small corner can impact the whole world. A small country story can inspire all humanity. From small to big, everyone is making a difference. Alibaba believes in the power of small. We are proud to be the worldwide partner of the Olympic Games, giving everyone an equal chance. Together, we're in this game. From one to billions, we see the power of small. To the greatness of small.
Okay.
Alright, so the whole concept is about Alibaba helping the underdogs, drawing on Alibaba's legacy, or what it started out as helping the small businesses, small entrepreneurs those who are selling on Taobao, those who are selling on all the other various platforms, because they are using digital to help these Chinese business. Many of them became millionaires because they're selling on Taobao. So they want to use that as a concept to bring onto this campaign, that they are an enabler for underdogs or those who have less means to digital innovations. So they are going to have set a hub during the games with showcasing what the technology can do, facial recognition and all that. But I think the problem is they want to tell the world that we are Alibaba, but nowhere in the commercial is mentioned that there's any mention about Alibaba and what Alibaba does. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I had sort of a little bit of an opposite reaction actually, because I think, the storyline, the underdog storyline, that's fine. But there were a couple things, like I sort of expected them to tie that underdog aspect back to the company and sort of say something like, we started small and look at us now, or something like that. But then at the same time, there was also a moment where they, in like a great booming narrator voice, said, we are sponsoring the Olympics, which is like, you don't need to say that. We're watching your ad. You put your name at the end. You have the 5 rings. You paid a lot of money to show the 5 rings. That's enough. You don't have to. It was almost like it's too self-referential. Like, well, look at how important we are sponsoring the Olympics, and that's not the way to make it into anybody's mental space to say how great we are, right? So
Right.
that was my feeling.
Right. But I think the point is good about it. It's true. It's like is there really that much to tie it back to Alibaba, etc. And the other thing is yes, I understand that they sponsor, and basically enable small businesses to start, but it's coming from the voice of one of the biggest companies in all of China. So it's like, we are massive, but we're all about the underdog. I get it, but it's not. On the other hand, the tone, a lot of people would say it's a safe ad. It's you see these kinds of, with the swelling music during the Olympics, but I think that's okay. I think that kind of during the Olympics, the appetite for that does grow. People that are watching the Olympics have a certain amount of nationalistic pride, and they're in that mood to like those kinds of commercials. So yes, it might have been safe, but I think it's even though if it was a safe choice, it's a better choice than going with something off the wall that just doesn't resonate. Because, like you said, you spend all that money, you need to get your bang for your buck.
Not just one ad. It's a 3-part series.
Yeah.
They have 3 clips. One of the clips is a reimagined scene when Bobby Pierce rode across the rover from Australia. So he stopped halfway and he let the ducks pass. That happened in 1928. So they reproduced the whole scene in one of the series. So again, there's very little. How does it connect back to Alibaba? That's how I feel.
One thing that is really good about it, of course, is to see more Chinese brands really stepping out onto the world stage,
Exactly.
at all. So that's something that 3 years ago we often talked about, how we weren't seeing that and why weren't we seeing it, and now we are seeing it. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's highs and lows for this week. Thanks a lot for hanging around with us, and we'll be back next week. Also, in the future, we'll be bringing in different people, different guests from the industry as well. So watch for that, and until next week, have a good one.
Thanks much.